welcome to Life Chats with Maggie and Bunny. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Bunny.
Well, Bunny, we have a special guest with us today. Would you like to tell us about our guest?
Absolutely. So we do have John Shearer with us here today. So I'm just going to read a little bit from his website. John Shearer is an outspoken advocate for mental health, suicide prevention, and sharing personal stories. John has reached millions of people through live talks, documentaries, radio, podcasts like this one, print, and online. John strives to make a continuing positive impact, utilizing, sharing, and listening to encourage helpful, unscripted conversations around mental health, suicide prevention, and getting the most out of life. Growing up in Adelaide and raising a family in Wagga Wagga, he now resides in Hervey Bay, Queensland. And you can see more about John on his website, which we will be linking in the description attached to this podcast. And so I do know, we know John, and I met John actually through Maggie. He brought us she brought him into our circle. And so I'd love to throw it over to Maggie so she can explain everything she knows.
Well, everybody who knows me knows that I've spoken about John Shearer a number of times when I speak about mindfulness and learning all about that. I actually met John in 2014 when I was seeking some help for my own monkey mind and stressing and having a great deal of anxiety. And the therapist that I was seeing said, find out what monkey mind is. Find out what monkey mind is. I went home and searched Google, and up came this man. Up came his website. And I thought, why would the first thing flooding my Google be somebody from Australia, not somebody from my own town? But it was a spirit connection. It was intentional by spirit that John Shearer showed up into my inbox, because what I have learned from this man, is phenomenal. He taught me how to not only control my own monkey mind, but how to create a ripple in my own life that affects people that come in contact with me. John is the first person that taught me that one person is enough to change the world, and told me a story about one person coming and knocking on his door and changing his life. So today we're going to talk to John about that, because one person changed his life, he changed my life, how the ripple works. So John, tell us a bit about your story.
Thanks, Maggie. It's a pleasure knowing you and your partner, I guess, Bunny. Yeah, thank you for the invitation to come on, and I will share my story. And also, I'll give your listeners a little lesson in mindfulness, what true mindfulness is. In 1982, on my father's 65th birthday, I died in a truck crash and was obviously revived. And I was pretty smashed up, and I needed operations and things, but it wasn't my physical body that was a real problem, although it was for a long time. It was my mental health. Later that year, I was diagnosed with having psychosis, and then I got stuck in the mental health system for 15 years. I was depressed, anxious, manic, you name it. And I was even hospitalized on different occasions in a mental health unit. And I'm really thankful for those 15 dark years now, because it helped shape me and it helped make me who I am today. So we should always be thankful for our past life lessons, that's for sure. And yeah, so I'll fast forward now through my depressed and suicidal years. I wasn't always unwell. There was times when I was well, and I really felt like there was some sort of calling on my life, a reason why I came back. And I did various counselling courses through my volunteer work with the Smith family, which is a very charitable organisation here in Australia. And also I volunteered at a youth refuge, which was to get me a job later on, working with youth, mentoring youth. So 1997, and on what was to become World Mental Health Day, the 10th of October, 10/10, an old friend who I hadn't seen since well before my accident was passing through town, and he had what he called a spiritual prompt to come and knock on my door. And he shared his story with me, and that story led to my spiritual awakening. At that time, mental health professionals told me that what I had was incurable, that I'd have to take medication for the rest of my life, and that I'd never work again. And I believed them, and that's what kept me stuck. We've got to be careful what we believe. So my friend shared his story with me. I got my life back next year. And what got it back for me was my newfound perspective on light and dark, fear and love. The next year I met my beautiful wife, Maureen, who you know as well. And oh boy, what a journey I've been on. At that time, I started every morning without fail. I would connect with Source, with God, the universe, whatever you like to call it, and say, what are we doing today? What are we doing today? And that's what got my life back, my newfound partnership, the partnership that I developed with Source. And for many years now, I've been saying, what are we doing today? Sol, S-O-L. It's an ancient Roman word for the sun. I see the sun as my source. You can see it in my background. That's where we now live, actually. You'll see a almost 1 kilometre long jetty in the background. And we love Harvey Bay. And yeah, that's Sol in the background. And when I ask that question every morning, I pause my mind and see what drops in. Sometimes it's, no, have a rest today, don't do anything. Or it might be start an organisation, which I did, which you are a part of, or work on my book. I'm working on my 3rd book, actually. Whatever. So it's amazing. I don't plan, because I allow life to come to me. It's just a far better way to live, not in the past, which can make us depressed, or not in the future, which can make us anxious. We just live now, in the present moment. That's where life is. You can't find it anywhere else, only right now. So that's a little bit about my journey. And I just love sharing my story, just like my friend shared his story with me and changed my life. And you've probably heard me say before, it is always my hope that those who are touched by my ripple then start a ripple of their own. And I love the ripple that you two have started with the books and now podcasts. Well done. You're making a difference in the world. We can, and we should. And I really believe that it's the only way the world will change is one person at a time, is by sharing stories. And we've all got a story, and we should share them. Take our masks off, make ourselves vulnerable, because it's like a superpower, vulnerability. When you make yourself vulnerable, it's like giving permission to the other or others to open up. And wouldn't it be a wonderful world if we all took our masks off and became open?
Wouldn't
So
it be?
what were you going to say, Maggie?
I said, wouldn't it be? You said, wouldn't
Oh,
it be a wonderful world? And I said, yeah, wouldn't
it sure would.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got my life back with my newfound perspective on fear and love, or light and dark. I was still having unhelpful and negative thoughts, which we all do. I don't think anyone's exempt from that inner critic or our brain bringing up past trauma, thinking it's keeping us safe. We all experience these things. No one's exempt from it, that's for sure. But I could handle it with my newfound perspective. That I'm a bit of a Star Wars fan, actually, and I would say, no, that thought's from the dark side. I'm not going there. I'm going to walk in the light. So I sort of started to manage my mind a little bit. But then in 2009, I'll fast forward a little bit now, when we decided to move north here in Australia, then I thought, what was it? What would I do? So I started surfing the internet. And we know when you surf the internet, you find what you're meant to find. And what I did find was a book written by an Australian doctor, Dr. Russ Harris, called The Happiness Trap. And it's a book about ACT therapy, ACT, ACT therapy, which is a therapy, it's a mindfulness-based therapy. And that's what I fell in love with, mindfulness. Wow, this is a good thing. And I used to say in the early days back in 2009, mindfulness will change the world one day. And I decided to start a business called Mindfulness Coach, and started handing out business cards, of course. And invariably people would say, mindfulness, what's that? And of course, that's 15 years ago now. But I can't remember the last time someone asked me that question, because it's become a household name. The world has embraced it, which is fantastic. So now I say mindfulness is changing the world. But do people really understand what a true mindful practice is? So I'm going to explain a little bit about that. But first, I'll just say about ACT therapy, just in case people are curious about that. It stands for acceptance and commitment therapy. Excuse me. I've studied all the therapies, and all the modern day therapies are mindfulness based. When we accept whatever shows up as a thought, no matter how good or bad it is, we just accept it. Practice mindfulness, bring ourselves back to the present moment. And then the commitment part of ACT is making a commitment to act on our values. So we have 4 or 5 core values, and they're different for all of us. 4 or 5 core values. So we go to one of those and make an action plan. So when the negative thought, for example, or unhelpful thought shows up, then we bring ourselves to the present moment. And then we go to a value and make an action plan. So what we're actually doing is creating new pathways in our mind. We're going from the negative to the positive, or from the unhelpful to the helpful. And it really does work. But it's the mindfulness. Wow. In the background, you'll see my logo, Be Mindful, Pause, Connect. For many years now, I've made that's been my thing. And it's how I've simplified 10,000 hours of study into mindfulness in all cultures, especially the ancient cultures. And I found it in every culture. Sometimes it wasn't called mindfulness, but it was there. Even in Aboriginal culture here in Australia. And there's different dialects around Australia, but a couple of words that I've learned is Dediri in the northern part of Australia and Ghana, where I was living in northern New South Wales in Bunjalung language. And in ancient tradition, I guess, or how it's been probably for thousands of years, it's the oldest culture on the planet, the Aboriginal culture. And when people had trauma, like a death in the family, for example, they used to go to the spiritual guru of the tribe, and every tribe had one, sadly missing these days. But they used to go to the spiritual guru and taught Ghana. And Ghana involved going bush into nature and practice deep listening, which is listening beyond our thoughts, which is mindfulness. And when we are in the bush or in nature, and we've all experienced the peacefulness of that, if our mind is quiet enough to listen, not with our ears, nature speaks. We get answers for the things that are on our mind. An animal might run out of the bush, or two birds might land on a branch nearby, and we get sometimes confirmation or affirmation or whatever. And our mind synchronizes with nature. It's a beautiful thing. So be mindful, pause, connect. So I'll just explain that now for your listeners. Be mindful is an instruction that I teach people to use, and it comes from our heart. Because one thing I have learned is that God, the universe, source, whatever, reads hearts, not minds, hearts. And that's why it's really important to have good heart intention. So from the heart, we use the instruction. Anytime we notice our mind being unhelpful or negative, or in the past, or just far away, and we don't only practice this when we need it either, we practice it all the time, in the good times too. But we use the heart. Be mindful, we tell ourselves. And we gradually put our heart in charge of our mind, because our mind can't be trusted. It can be our best friend or our worst enemy, that's for sure. Be mindful, we tell ourselves. Then we allow that to trigger a pause. It only takes a few seconds. And with practice, we do it in an instant. So we pause our thoughts for a few seconds, and in that pause, we connect. We connect in three different ways. We connect with where we are, using our five senses, especially sight and sound, but also smell, taste, and touch if you're with your partner. We connect with who we're with full presence. That's not thinking about what to say next or something clever to say or having any agenda. Just be present. And the third and most important part is connecting with our source, with God, the universe, Jesus, Buddha, whatever. Doesn't really matter what you call it. The important thing is connect. And out of that little bit of silence you create in your mind, when you pause your thoughts, then something will drop in, and we start connecting with that nothingness where everything is. And that is so important. A lot of people believe mindfulness is meditation or yoga. And sure, when we meditate, we are practicing mindfulness, but mindfulness isn't something you make time to do, like meditation or yoga. It becomes our life. We start connecting. Our relationships improve, and our connection with the divine improves. We start, out of that silence we create, we start receiving divine wisdom and intelligence. We start to become more creative. And honestly, it's like Dr. Russ Harris, he called his book The Happiness Trap. And I get that, because if you start pursuing happiness, you'll never find it. You'll never get there. you'll always be chasing after something. But with a mindful practice, the reward for your practice is both peace of mind and clarity of mind. Things that I never had one time through my 15 dark years, that's for sure. I definitely had a monkey mind, a drunken monkey at that, all over the place, non-stop, blah, 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 blah. I used to overthink everything, get anxious about things, and anyhow, not for a long time now. So that's the practice, a deceptively simple practice. Be mindful, pause, connect. And the hardest thing for me to do 15 years ago was remember to practice. I'd go 3-4 days and I'd go, oh, mindfulness, that's right. And I'd get back to it. But once I made a point of starting every day by being mindful and throughout my day, connecting and being mindful, wow, it's don't take my word for it. Just start practicing. Anyone that hasn't developed a practice already, and I know you two have, and it's almost our job is to pay it forward, and that's the way you're doing it by doing podcasts and publishing books. So well done, ladies. It's just absolutely amazing the work you're doing. And I'll always be doing my work as well until the day I die. And I have seen a lot of amazing ripples created by people who do develop their practice. And the greatest antidote for depression, honestly, is finding your purpose. And I've certainly found mine. And when you have that sense of purpose, you have a reason to get out of bed.
Right.
I've seen times when I couldn't see a reason to get out of bed. So I've seen both sides of the coin, that's for sure. So I encourage everybody, be mindful, pause, connect, and keep doing it until it becomes habit. And then you won't need the instruction anymore because it'll become automatic. You'll just pause and connect, and life will not pass you by. That's for sure. Yeah.
And the neat thing about the mindfulness practice, which I tell my clients and people that I meet, is it's a practice. You have to do it all the time. It's not something that you ever don't need. It's not something that you ever get so good at that you can put it on a shelf and pack it away there. It's a practice that you have to do all day long, every day that you're alive. And some days it's easier and some days it's harder, but you just keep doing it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Absolutely. Sometimes I get people that say, oh, mindfulness, I've tried mindfulness, it doesn't work for me. And I say, tell me about your practice. They don't have one.
Right.
It's not about knowledge. We can read books, read 100 books and have all the knowledge, but without the practice, it's useless. Yeah. So
It's
you're
about
quite
practicing it in the dark times as well as in the light time.
yes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yes. So I did want to bring up, I know for me, the way that I was introduced to you was through Maggie, when she decided that she wanted to, as she said, continue practicing the mindfulness that you had taught, and also like continue your ripple. So share, because all of us, when we find something new that we're passionate about and really can help us, we want everybody to jump on this same, here, this can help you. So that's what she did and created a 52-week long, because your book, Mindful Insights, the Radical Practice for Self-Realization, is a 52-week journey to master your mind. And it is a book that goes through week by week, 52 weeks, like smallish kind of chapters where you do practice mindfulness. And she held a book club for us. There was a group of us that we did that. And I will tell you that while I had heard of mindfulness before and the idea of pausing my mind and connecting and everything, some of the insights that you give in that book were just things I always get stuck on the anger one, on the anger one, because yes, I felt anger, and I knew that when I would be angry, it wasn't a feeling I liked to be in. I didn't like to be in that energy. I didn't like to feel that way. But I just didn't know or understand why I would get angry. And I think you very distinctly explain that in your book. It really is like a sense of control, or being out of control, where, things aren't going the way you expected, people aren't acting the way you expect, whatever the case may be. And that one, like, really kind of stuck in my mind, and the being a closed door or closed minded during those times, like, are what was the, I guess, what was the, like, the reason that you did the book? Like, what was the reason for doing the 52 weeks? Is it important to do it over 52 weeks? Could you read it in a month instead? Like, what would, if you want to just explain a little bit more about your book? And
Well, my first book in 2014 was the result of an online event that I created. I called it Mindfulness Day, because we have a day for everything else. I thought, why not mindfulness? So I created a Facebook event and invited Australians with mental suffering, but people from all around the world, of course, joined in. 4,700 people, actually. And I went to the universe and, what am I going to do with this response? So what I did do was make a list of 30 words most to do with mindfulness, and then put them in order. And then every morning I wrote a blog on that word and posted it to the event wall. And I called it Mindful May. So it went all of May. First Sunday in May, we've just had the 11th Mindfulness Day this year. I mean, last year.
Yeah.
This year will be the 12th. Time gets away, doesn't it?
yeah.
Sure does.
So I posted, my blog, I guess you'd call it, to the wall. And, hundreds of lives were transformed by what I wrote. It was amazing, a life-changing month, which not only changed my life, but it changed hundreds of lives as well. And at the end of it, I announced that I was going to turn that into a book, the little blogs that I shared. And I got 800 emails straight up from people wanting a copy of my book when it was ready. So I got it published. It had 27 chapters in the end, and they were like steps to building your mindful practice, for sure. And then a few years later, I decided to expand that book into 52 emails, 52 weeks, and started offering a mentoring service, which I still offer. And I only charge $12 Australian, which is about the same in Canadian dollars, $12 a fortnight. And people sign up for 26 fortnights, 52 weeks. Because if we're in a bad place, if we've had failed relationships, or we're really depressed, anxious, whatever, it takes time. There's no overnight fix. There's no quick fix. Sure, you can start your mindful practice, and that will eventually fix anyone, for sure. But there's a lot of different aspects, and a lot of things we've also got to get right to be able to become awakened or enlightened, or there's lots of different words for the same thing. So I expanded it into 52 weeks, I call them, not chapters. And that mentoring service was so successful that I decided to turn that into a book, which is called Mindful Insights. And I've got a copy here. That was my first book, which I actually it's not in, you can't buy that anymore. I actually stopped it, but it was called Mindful Actions. And you can see the ripple on the cover, the ripple effect.
I
So-
still have a few of those, so there are still a few out there.
Oh, there's still a few around, and that's Mindful
Mindful
Insight.
insight. Yes.
a 52-week journey to master your mind. Yeah.
And that one is available on Amazon to purchase, I believe, the Kindle
yes,
version of that. Is the
and I
paperback
see
version available there as well?
it's only available from me.
Okay.
I send it all over the world, actually.
Yep.
So I got the book printed. I thought that was the best way to actually market the book, was to do it myself. But it is available. Just search John Shearer or Mindful Insights on Amazon, and you can get the digital copy. Yeah.
And I
So
want to stress to our listeners, if there's people out there today who are in a dark place, who don't see a light at the end of their tunnel, I can tell you and I can guarantee you 100% that if you put forth the effort to get this book and to practice that 52 weeks, you will change your life and you will find your way in that darkness. Any one of us who are on this podcast will help you. And as well, you will help yourself. And it's all about remembering that you can't change in one day something that took you a lifetime to get wrong. So if it'd be good if we were all born, and at the time we're born, we're taught to practice mindfulness in the same way that we're taught to walk and talk and learn our ABCs. But at this point, up until now, we haven't lived in a world that taught that. So we've used our whole life, my years of being there, of doing things the incorrect way and listening to my monkey mind. And so you can't expect that to go away in a minute. So as you practice over that 52 weeks, you will see a change. And even if you only did 30 days of something, I remember when I practiced, I did a gratitude practice for 30 days. And at the end of that 30 days, I was amazed at how much more gratitude I had than I did in the beginning. Anything that you practice, you will see a change. So if you're in that dark place right now, we want you to know that you can get out of it. And just as John said in the beginning, mindfulness does change the world. Every single person can be changed by mindfulness. 100% guaranteed.
and it's
We
important
believe.
for people to realize that mindfulness is a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
It is also taught from a scientific perspective. And a lot of schools now, I've lobbied government here in Australia, and I'm not the only one, to get mindfulness into schools, into, we call them primary schools. It's got different names wherever you are in the world, but young people, they can learn it, and they should. We don't teach our kids what to think, or we should be teaching them how to think. Big difference.
Right.
Huge
The
difference.
same as there's a big difference between a spiritual practice and a religious practice. And I can't stress enough that a spiritual practice can be whatever that is to you. It's not what I think it is. It's not what Bunny thinks it is. It's not what John thinks it is. It's whatever that spiritual practice is to you. It could be going and sitting by a tree. It can be whatever it is for you. But if you ask the universe to open you up to some kind of spiritual practice, I can as well tell you the universe will show you something. And it doesn't matter what the universe shows you, it's going to be right for you.
Absolutely, Maggie. Spot on. Yeah, like the science is important, and they've shown by putting little electrodes on people's heads and actually get them to think about past trauma, and then the graph fires off all these big long red, this big unhealthy energy shows on the graph, and then they take them to a meditative state, a state of mindfulness, and then it all calms down to little short blue ones, and we become calm. And science has proved also that stress is a killer. It actually does kill people eventually.
Mhm.
It's very, very unhealthy. And mindfulness is certainly the best antidote for stress and depression. No doubt about that. And anxiety, all of it.
Mhm.
But it's a spiritual practice. It's a practice where when we practice that connection with source, then we really are developing this thing that comes quite natural to us, actually. But
Right.
yeah, anyhow, don't take my word for it. Everyone, get practicing, and your relationships. Well, the relationship with yourself is the most important one. It starts with you, and we can't really even help anyone else until we get ourselves right. That's for sure.
That's right.
Yeah. So
So
be
thank you
mindful.
so much,
Pause.
John,
Connect.
for joining with us today. And I guess the one thing that I would want to ask you for today is if you could tell somebody who is in that dark place one thing, what would you want them to know?
Well, of course, my logo. Be mindful. Pause. Connect. And I'll just share something that happened a little while ago. I got a phone call out of the blue, and this guy said, "Oh, John, you might not remember me, but we met at a bus stop about 5 years ago." And I did recall it, but I asked, where was the bus stop? Sure enough, that was it. And this guy was sitting there deep in thought. He had his head down, and I got a spiritual prompt, and I always follow my spiritual prompts. We all should. So sometimes they don't make sense. I go, I'm not going to do that. Well, why? But I've come to realize years ago that it's not about me, it's about them. So I followed my spiritual prompt, introduced myself, and actually gave him a card and just explained, be mindful, pause, connect. I spent probably 5 minutes with him. Anyhow, he rang me out of the blue to thank me for saving his life. He didn't tell me on the day, but he shared with me that he was planning to end his life that afternoon. And that just gave me I got it again, spiritual buzz. People call that goosebumps sometimes, but it's a spiritual buzz, make no mistake. So, follow our spiritual prompts. And even just recently, we do market stalls here in Australia. We sell singing bowls, and Maureen, my wife, and I, we do sound therapy using ancient instruments, gongs and cymbals and chimes and singing bowls. And this guy was walking towards my stall, and 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 as he got there, I got a prompt to say, "Do you know I've been so depressed I was suicidal?" That was the first thing I said to him. I didn't know him, and sure enough, he opened up, and he was suicidal. So why did I get that prompt? It's because we're all connected, and when we develop a mindful practice, we also develop an intuition. And it's a soul or spiritual intuition as well. And we've all got this capability. You don't have to have any special talent or gifts to develop this. Just develop your mindful practice, and it's just one of the thousands of benefits, honestly. Yeah.
For sure. Bunny, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'm going to add, just for listeners that are out there, if you can't reach one of us, if you are in a crisis, if you are, feeling like you are going to harm yourself or in some way harm another, to reach out. There are resources. I actually just learned of a phone number that is nationwide in Canada. I'm not sure if they have the same thing in Australia, but we have, just like you could call 911, you can call 988. That's 988 on your phone, and 24/7 you can reach somebody out there for mental health or suicide prevention to kind of help you out. We do have to say that there are a bunch of resources out there. There are people that are like John, Maggie, and I who are also out there that you can reach out to. I do know that, in times of crisis, sometimes we do have to go to somebody to kind of help us through that. So I do want to make sure that that is set out there as well. We would all advocate for that as well. Whatever you have to do to get you through to tomorrow, you know, to the 5 minutes from now, because you always have hope, right? There's always hope for you out there. So in crisis, reach out. And then once you can, you know, reach out to John or something, you can then try to get yourself so you wouldn't be in crisis again another time.
That's
so
right, for sure. And those crisis situations happen a lot of times out of your control.
Right.
And don't feel bad about it when you're in those situations. And when you do get those connections, to pay attention to them. You know, I can tell of a story as well. Like one time I woke up in the middle of the night, I get up to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, I picked up my iPad. I felt I need to pick up my iPad. I picked up my iPad, and there was somebody on Facebook asking for help, that they were at the end of their tether and they just needed somebody. Is there anybody out there who can help me? And yes, I messaged and I said, you are loved. You are not alone. Never are you alone. There are always angels, guides, and ancestors out there ready to help you. So reaching out, whether you reach out to one of those numbers for the connecting help, whether you just reach out to an anonymous peer support group, whether you just connect inside and ask angels to help you, God, source, whatever it is, that support is there. And you know, please know that you are never alone and you are always extremely loved. So thank you so much, John, for joining us today. And we will post your information within this podcast, so people know how to get a hold of you.
Yep.
And, you know, just remember, it doesn't matter where you are in the country. We're all connected.
Or in the world. You know, everywhere in the
Yes.
world.
We are all connected.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John.
So, Bunny,
Okay.
you go ahead. Tell
Yeah.
everybody where to find us.
So you know where you can find us, everywhere that podcasts do get put out. So Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, all of those podcasts, as well as our YouTube channel and on Facebook, on our Facebook page. It is every Monday that we put out our podcasts, Life Chats, at 11 a.m. And we are doing more guests in the future. So thank you very much, John, for joining us.
Thanks, Bunny. Thanks, Maggie.
Bye,
Have a great
everybody.
day. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye.